Hi, my name is Bennett Hine, and I'm here today on behalf of 500 Firms, and I'm joined with Chris Osman, who is a student founder. And so today we're going to be learning a little bit more about his platform, Studium, how it works, what it's used for, and how it's connecting students in our community. So with that being said, Chris, can you describe what Studium is for an audience member who doesn't know?
Yeah, of course. First and foremost, thank you guys very much for having me on. Appreciate any opportunity that we get to speak a bit more about what we're doing. So what Studium is, at this point, what it will be released as in the fall semester is a exclusive social network for college campuses. So we do everything from management of student orgs and Greek life, facilitating all of their event organization, promotion, recruitment of new students, down to the peer side of things, helping kids discover one another within their courses, organize collaborative studies, discover peers that have similar interests, similar involvements, or pursuing specific or similar career paths. And the idea is there's all of these things that occur within a campus community. There's a bunch of opportunity, really awesome kids that you're probably sitting next to most days. But generationally, we're getting to a point where kids don't interact face-to-face so much. So we're trying to leverage digital to kind of bring that in or back into the campus community.
Nice. Yeah, that was really well said. I think Studium is doing some pretty cool things like within the student space. And it's kind of unique in that like it's an app that works with students. And I was wondering, how did you manage to think of that like great idea? And
It was my own frustrations sitting in Thompson Library. I would sit there studying for exams, and I would recognize kids from all of my classes, as you do walking around campus all the time. And I started to think more about how I sit next to these kids on a daily or a weekly basis, and we had no form of connection. We never had a conversation. We never introduced ourselves, yet there was like this facade of knowing one another. So when I started to think about that, I started to take a lot of interest into how kids were interacting within the classroom, and I would see kids sit down, and was guilty of it myself, but keeping a headphone in, sitting on your laptop, texting your friends, taking notes, and then second class was over, you get up and you're gone. And that's kind of, I realized where this was stemming from, and I realized it was only going to get worse. So I felt as if we could develop some sort of platform to kind of bridge the gap between students within the classroom and leverage the digital, as I mentioned before, then we could get those individuals sitting down at the same table, studying with one another, and hopefully forming relationships that they could continue to leverage throughout their college career and potentially beyond.
nice. Yeah. Is it more of an app for like students in college or students in high school? I guess, is there a range for that?
Yeah, so at this point in time, it's exclusive to college campuses. So we actually license our software to universities. With that, it's rolled out on the campus. There's there's an administrative side to it, which is entirely separate from all of the student stuff. But with that, it's only at college campuses right now. Students come, they sign on with their university credentials through their LMS, and then immediately in their profile, they can add a couple things from there, and within really 2 minutes, they can get into our application and start participating in the community.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. And then I noticed that you were an Ohio State student and that you just graduated. Is that correct? Or oh no, okay, that's wrong.
I've got 30 credit hours left.
Okay, nice. Do you plan to like work on Studium part-time, or once you graduate, do you want to work on it full-time?
Studium has truly been full time for the last, I mean, since the end of fall semester last year. I considered it to be full time, like outside of school, which I really started falling off on because I just became so passionate about this. And once we launched our MVP, I saw a lot of value in what we were doing. Past what we were doing at that point in time, I saw a lot of value in what we could do. So I got pretty far away from school. Spring semester I only took 2 courses. I've got 1 class scheduled for next semester, and depending on how things go in the next 2 months, we'll see if I have any more classes or if I'm still on that one or not.
Mm-hmm. No, that's cool. Do you have any tips for students who want to be an entrepreneur while still being in school? Or
I think part of it is surrounding yourself with the right people, and that's like a super cliche answer, but for me, it was discovering other kids within the campus community or external from that, and outside of actually kids, surrounding yourself really with older people who are kind of like 5 or 10 years ahead of where you are, but in a position that you want to be. And that was always very inspirational for me. So I think when you sit around students all the time, you have the mindset of a student. And if you're somebody who believes you've really got a great idea or a great concept that could one day be a viable product or a viable service, then you need to start surrounding your people potentially within that space or potentially at a level of stature of business success that you want to be in 5 and 10 years, and you'll start to pick up on how they operate, how they interact, how they communicate, all of these little things that you have to learn to actually be successful as a founder, not just a student founder.
No, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I've heard a lot of good advice similar to that, is like surrounding yourself with the right people. But one question kind of a lot of students and I also have is, when you're at a campus like Ohio State, how do you find the right people that will be successful, but also like can be good friends with you? And like,
Yeah,
how do you kind of get to know them?
I feel like you kind of set me up for this one. So at scale, we expect to facilitate all of that. The whole point of our platform, there's actually, within the last week, we've been discussing introducing an entirely new aspect to the platform that would kind of do what we're talking about right now. And I don't want to get too far into it. But that being said, even without that, what we intend to do is connect individuals that not only have the same interest, but through our platform, we recognize involvement. We recognize what you engage with, who you engage with. And what we can start to do is better understand who you are and what your interests are. And through that, connecting you with proper individuals, whether it be for business sense and trying to find other founders or engineers on campus, or just finding somebody that you want to go rock climb with or lift with, whatever it may be. So that's a huge aspect, or kind of one of the main aspects of our platform, and connecting individuals with like interests that can get together and do their thing.
Nice. Yeah, that's something I could definitely see myself using to find other like-minded people in a space like Ohio State. Another question I have is kind of about your past work and how it's been helpful. So can you tell me about your past jobs or internships, and if
Yeah.
you think that they are like helpful in creating Studium?
Yeah, I never done an internship. I kind of just threw myself in, and I think that's another thing. Going back to like, how do you get started? A lot of people are skeptical of like either what they need to do or whether they can do it or not. And for that reason, a lot of people don't ever get started. And I think one of the biggest things is kind of just, in whatever manner that may be, just throwing yourself in head first and figuring out if this is for you. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. Can you manage that? Can you figure out how to get past them and continue moving forward? So that's back to another question. But my first, I worked in restaurants, and I bust, and I feel that I've always been extroverted and talking and kind of expanding upon my network, and the restaurant was somewhere that I could kind of hone in on those skills. Just communicating with people quickly in a concise manner, which I think is very important in the business world. But actually getting into business itself, I started off doing really just like menial labor work, people pushing me paperwork, revising stuff, building little landing pages for people and stuff like that. But I quickly took a lot of interest in the product development side of that, and was offering my 2 cents when I felt like it was appropriate. And when I realized that people started taking interest in that, people actually saw the value that I had to add to some of these things, I got more prominent roles in some of these things, up until the point of being a project manager on a variety of projects with a fairly large brand and marketing consultancy firm. And through that, I learned a lot. There were certainly a lot of downfalls, and I think those are some of the best moments when you're getting started. If you can recognize when you screw up badly, or when, for lack of better terms, shit hits the fan, and how to deal with that or how not to deal with that. I mean, you recognize that as a learning lesson, you can take that and you can move forward with it. So I think being a part of that or having those experiences at a young age allowed me to do the things that I'm doing now still at a young age. And every day I'm constantly learning, but probably one of the biggest things is just recognizing when you do things right and why it was right, and when you do things wrong, what you should have done and why that was the wrong decision. And then they kind of just pile up upon one another, and you get to the point like, we're 2 years into this, and I feel confident in the decisions that I'm making now based on all of the bad decisions that I've made in the past.
Okay. No, yeah, that's makes a lot of sense. I guess my next question is more about Studium and like the culture side. How do you guys want the culture to be like within the Studium app, and like how do you guys facilitate that?
Progressive is probably the best word to describe it. Um, One of the biggest things that we focus on is personal growth in a lot of different aspects. Mental health is a huge one for us, which we're going to be stepping a lot more into in the future if we can have success with this platform this fall semester. But overall culture is just hating one another, being there as truly a peer to the individuals that are around you in whatever manner that be, whatever form that takes. It could be assisting somebody with homework. It could be connecting with somebody with another student to get them an internship or get them in a student org or something along those lines. But we kind of view a community and really our application as a bunch of different branches. And with each little interaction that happens within that application, we're extending those branches. And the further that they reach out, the further that we see that student body growing as a whole, but also individually.
Nice. That was a great answer. And then I know that like in order to be a successful app at a college, you kind of have to do some effective marketing. And I know that like there's a lot of different past stories, like for example, Tinder, they would go to sororities and fraternities and tell them that the other like genders were on this app and that you should like join this app to meet them. What effective methods do you guys use for marketing at Studium?
Um, Initially, it was like we were referred to as having guerrilla marketing tactics, because we would just plaster the campus with flyers and sit in the oval and hand out cards and stuff like that. But it worked to the point that we have, like, after nearly a year of releasing that product, and I mean, we did very minor figures with that product. We still have people to this day that say, "Oh, like Studium, I know that." They might not have downloaded the application, but they saw a flyer. In that form, it worked. Now, with the direction we're going now, that was being a completely third-party application to the campus. What we do is we license our software to the campus. It's adopted and it's provided as a student resource by the institution. So marketing is much different right now. One of the most unique and most important things that we do, kind of from a marketing standpoint, more of just an adoption standpoint, we're really the earliest touch point that a university can have within a freshly enrolled student. So the second that a student receives their acceptance into a university and they commit, they receive university credentials, they're immediately able to be integrated into our community, where they can start discovering orgs, discovering students on campus, connecting with one another, potentially finding a dorm mate, whatever it may be. So there's a lot of the marketing comes through the university. A lot of it comes through what I was talking about with pushing all of this content around the overall student experience. We just want to provide as much value and as much aid to students and really the administration as possible. And in doing so, we get a lot of exposure from it.
Nice. Yeah, that's a really good like way to market yourself, and especially working with a university that'll get a lot of students to check out your app. But one question, like following up on that, is how do you foster a relationship with the university and gain a sense of trust, for your app?
I probably picked one of the most difficult, slowest moving industries to work in. And I'm thankful to that, or for that, to a degree. It's taught me to be very, very patient. But universities move very, very slowly, and there's a lot of hierarchy that takes place. So trying to get in front of somebody that you actually need to speak to, especially the stage that we're at, is very difficult. It takes a lot of time. The conversations that we're in with a prominent Big Ten university is nearly 2 years worth of work. And that's all coming together within the last month, to the point that it went from 2 years of being bounced around and talking to people that were kind of just pushing us up the ladder, to within a month talking to 6 of the most influential individuals within the university and us getting approval on all fronts. So it's a lot of patience. It's a lot of recognizing who has what influence, who has what connections and contacts. And I think that's what businesses in general, and expanding upon the network, it's great to have a valuable network, but if you don't know how to leverage that network, then it's of no value. If you recognize who knows who, and who's willing to contact who for you, then you can actually leverage that. And that's what it's been for us. That's kind of what navigating higher ed sales is. So it's a lot of persistence and a lot of patience.
Nice. Yeah. Those are some really good character traits to have as an entrepreneur. What other character traits, or what character traits would you say you have that'll help to become a successful entrepreneur?
I think you've got to take your ego out of everything that you do first and foremost, or nothing's going to go anywhere. We've got to date 13 team members, 14 including myself. And it's very important to me that every piece of documentation that we create, multiple people have eyes on it. Every strategy discussion that we have, that there's multiple opinions that are well versed during those conversations. And that was because I recognized very early on that I couldn't make all of the decisions, that I at times was going to make the wrong decision, and somebody probably had the right decision. And taking your ego out of what you do, not just what you do, but like, especially when you go to a product, it's very easy to get defensive over what you would consider to be like your baby. Yeah. So if you can take that away, you can realize that I can't build a product for millions of students across the country simply based off of my intuition, my experience, what I've witnessed. Bringing all of these different people into the conversation has allowed us to grow so rapidly. So I think you got to take your ego out of anything that you do, really, but especially if you're trying to build a company. Past that, from a leadership standpoint, recognizing when to speak and when to be quiet. And at most times I try to just sit back and listen, because my team will just breathe these incredible ideas. And it's like, where did you come up with that? And we can start to build upon one another. But if I was sitting there and I felt like I had to speak over everybody, or I always had to have the last word, or I always had to make the decision, I would never hear those things. Or past that, and even worse, people want to be comfortable speaking up and voicing their opinions. I feel as though the culture that we've created internally, people are very comfortable saying, no, Chris, you're an idiot. Why would you do that? That makes no sense, because X, Y, and Z will happen. Mm-hmm. And that's important to me, because, again, I could easily make the wrong decision if somebody doesn't speak up and isn't comfortable enough to say that. So take your ego out of it. Be quiet at most times unless you feel it's absolutely vital to speak. And kind of the second part of that is think about what you're going to say before you speak about it. It's very easy when you're young and you're excited and you're hungry to jump to conclusions and like just throw out whatever's on your mind. Mm-hmm. Consider what you're going to say before you actually just blurt something out, because if you give somebody 5, 6, 7 more seconds to speak, you may realize that they've either answered your question, or your question isn't relevant, or the statement's not relevant or valuable, or whatever it may be. So just be conscious of when you're speaking, how you're speaking, and who you're speaking to.
Nice. Okay. That was a very well thought out answer. And then I'm like curious about your team, and how did you pick your team members, and how do you successfully manage them to like work effectively?
We spent close to 4 months grooming through somewhere in the ballpark of like 500 resumes. Wow. And we were thankful enough to have that much interest in working with us. And to us, that was like one of the first validating moments where it's like, students resonate with this. Students understand this, and they understand the value behind it. But we were very, very selective in who we moved forward with, and who we felt like fit in very well. You have to hire people who have experience in some way, shape, or form, but that experience doesn't have to be like multiple internships or like we have kids, we had kids within finance that were doing marketing for us and they were excelling at it.
Nice.
Just providing them like basic framework and then allowing them to be intuitive with the information that we give them, and build upon that. So from a selection standpoint, we looked for outside of engineers, anything business development wise. We just looked for slight interest or really just solid experience, or involvement or initiative in whatever it may be, because it was more work ethic and having an idea of what you wanted to do, or what we would want you to do, rather than like us hiring for hard skills. Past that, we looked for kids who were very passionate about what we were building, to the point that we had a lot of kids that were told to go and review our old landing page and then basically form an opinion on what our product was and then expand outside of that product. And through that little sample of work, we could start to see how they thought about our product, potentially what they can contribute to the product development side. And that was really helpful in us picking some people that were incredibly passionate about various aspects of what we do. You had some kids that were all about the student org side. You had other kids who were just head down on the mental health and understanding the impact that we could have one day. From a development and a design standpoint, we've got 2 great designers and 3 incredible engineers. And that was 4 months of like no luck. And within a week, we had all 5 of those individuals on board working, and it came together like almost like a movie. It made no sense, but we ended up with 2 designers who just brought what I had in mind to life exactly how I expected it to look, and 3 engineers that are building this. And I mean, the front end probably should have been built within 2 months. They built it within 3 weeks, and the back end is probably a 2 or 2.5 month project, and they're going to build it in 5 weeks. They're just kicking ass on all fronts.
Nice. That's really cool. And I guess it's interesting that you guys look for people with more of like work ethic versus like a hard skill. And that's really cool about what you guys are doing. Similarly, like, do you guys have funding, or how can you afford to like pay your employees? Or I guess, could you talk about that?
Only a few individuals that are paid. The bulk of money that was spent on the product that we went to market with last fall semester. So my dad gave me the initial investment of about $20K to get that product built. And that was built with a consultancy company. Now Waker, if you guys are trying to build anybody out there that has a little bit of funding to do so, Waker is an incredible development company that actually works more on the strategic development side of the products. But past that, I put just from saving up money from all the project management stuff, about another 12 or 13 grand to get it to the point of introducing network feature and functionality, the suggested connections, all those things. And now we only have a couple individuals that are paid, mostly in those leadership roles. Past that, everybody is an unpaid intern. I paid for credit hours for a couple of different kids. But we have a bulk of our employee base is students who are making no money and putting in 30, 40, 50 hours a week, no problem, in producing high quality content every single time.
Nice. That's really cool, I guess. And it's interesting how you like took that money and like you have this idea, and so like you're passionate about it. So that's what you do with it, which is awesome.
I think that forced me to, like, when I started investing my own money into this is when I really started putting time and effort into this.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of like the kick in the butt for me to get me to dive in like I needed to get to the point that we're at today.
Nice. And then I guess one of my last questions is, do you have any other interests outside of entrepreneurship?
I have a lot of interests, but I kind of hate the word entrepreneurship. I think it's a buzzword. I don't think I'm an entrepreneur. I think I'm a founder, and maybe that might be contradicting, but I love product development. I love the idea, really problem solving, of recognizing I have this issue, I've witnessed somebody else having this issue, and we can develop a solution around it. And to be able to develop solutions in a manner that we believe that they could scale to millions of people across the country and potentially internationally, it is incredibly exciting. So I don't like the word entrepreneurship. I don't think we've necessarily accomplished anything yet to earn the title of entrepreneur, maybe here in the near future. But at this point in time right now, we're just a bunch of kids who are really passionate about really changing the college experience for students for years and years to come, in the idea of actually making that happen. And the fact that we're getting the responses that we are today with everything that we're putting out just makes it that much easier to keep pushing.
All right, yeah, thanks. And then do you have any tips or advice for other student founders?
Before you do anything, it's, again, really easy to get excited about whatever it is your idea is and think it's the greatest thing in the world. But going back to what I said earlier, you can't, as one individual, build a product for even 1,000 people, just based off of your own experiences and your own assumptions of what that solution should and could be. So for anybody that believes that they've got a good idea, get that out on paper. That's one of the biggest things that, like, it took me for a while to get out what this was on paper. And the second that I did, everything started clicking and started building upon one another. When it's all just thoughts, it's really, really easy to put it off. So whatever your thought is, put it down on paper, start to scope out what feature and functionality looks like. And then from that, create a survey around what the problem is that you're solving, or maybe what the use cases may be that you would see used within your application or your product or your service, whatever it may be. I'm a huge proponent of not just diving in and building stuff, but diving into the R&D side, because you can quickly find out whether you're onto something or you're completely off, or you just might need minor tweaks. And from that research, you're getting valid, candid feedback from individuals that you can build off of. And everybody thinks that they've got a good idea and they run around campus or they tell their family and their friends about it, and they always get positive responses. So they think it's a good idea. Most people aren't willing to be brutally honest with you. I even experienced this with meetings with administrators as a student, them not wanting to say, hey, we want to purchase this at the state. This isn't the product that the university would use. And it made it really difficult for myself and the product to progress. So going out, running surveys with random individuals will give you the most candid feedback that you can actually make informative decisions off of and progress off of. And that's the biggest thing. When you have data, when you have feedback and response from a wide array of individuals or demographics, then you can start to make informed decisions that work for the masses, not just yourself or a couple of friends.
Nice. All right. And then if anyone wants to join Studium, how can they find you guys?
You guys can hit us at hello@joinstudium.com. If you're listening to this, go to joinstudium.com, throw your email in that petition page. Every single email is super helpful for us. We've got a solid amount of emails now, and hopefully we continue to, but that allows us to gauge students all around the country who are interested in an application like this and start to better target campus as we see more emails rolling in.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today. And I really enjoyed talking to you and hearing about Studium.
Thank you for the opportunity, man.
Yeah. Thanks. All right.